And he looks at me and he goes, when you're in here, you're so mild-mannered and you're so polite. And seeing you on the sidelines, you're like two different human beings. And I'm just like, yeah, I agree with you, man.
Hi, I'm Corey Baldwin.
And I'm Daniel Bowles. It's time for a new episode of Off the Beaten Path, a podcast for basketball coaches living in obscurity, working in obscurity, and even those who have made it out of obscurity.
It's a place for storytelling, learning, connecting, reconnecting, and food for thought, and my favorite part, food for the belly.
Today we welcome Dan Evans, the head coach at the University of North Georgia, straight out of Dahlonega, but we'll find out from a lot of different ways. Straight off of a Elite Eight appearance. So we're excited to have Coach on here today.
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate you having me.
Hey, Dan, let's jump right into this thing. I know we want to get to the Elite Eight and all the glimmering and awards and trophies and nets cutting down. But before we get there, let's go through what the heck got you in this crazy business?
Yeah, it's a good question. I went to a Division III school in Wisconsin. So I grew up in suburban Chicago. Was a good high school basketball player in the northwest suburbs, and team won a bunch. We got beat late in the state tournament, one game short of going downstate in Illinois, which is a really big deal. And thought I wanted to play, so I wasn't good enough for a scholarship. Wasn't really my ability level. I ended up going to a Division III school called Lawrence University. And while I was there, I thought about being a high school teacher and coach, to be honest. And so I was a history major. And sometime in my sophomore year, I took my first education class. And as part of the class, we were required to get 25 hours of like shadowing, you know what I mean, of classroom shadowing. And I went to Xavier High School in Appleton, Wisconsin, a small Catholic school, and sat in an English class with a teacher that one of our assistants had kind of hooked me up with to sit through. And by the time I walked out of that first hour of the classroom, I knew I was not going to teach. And so I changed gears and just kept my history major because I was deep enough into it and I didn't want to change necessarily that stuff, and just kind of graduated. And when I graduated, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I ended up getting a Fortune 500 kind of cubicle job in suburban Chicago. I moved out to Denver after about a year of doing that with a girl I was dating at the time. You can imagine how well that went. And then in the midst of some of that stuff is where I decided, I thought coaching would be a good route for me to consider. And that's when I started making an effort to get back into it.
So who was the coach at your school?
Yeah, so John Tharp was my college coach. He was a kind of a Wisconsin legend. He just got inducted into the Wisconsin Basketball Hall of Fame. It just got announced. I think it might be occurring this fall. And so he was my college coach. And when I was in Denver, I reached out to him and was like, I think I want to coach. Maybe I can come back to Lawrence and just volunteer and maybe do a grad school at one of the local universities that's nearby that has grad programs. And he kind of like kept me at arm's length in our conversation. And I was pretty confused by maybe what was happening. He had helped me get a volunteer job at the D League team that was right outside of Denver, the Colorado 14ers, where Joe Wolf was the head coach and Ken Davison was the assistant. And so I was just kind of tagging along with those guys as they did stuff anytime they were in town and watching and being present at games. And when I reached out to him about possibly coming back to the Midwest and coaching with him, he sort of was low key is how I would describe it. And I was a little bit caught off guard. Well, 2 weeks after we'd had a couple conversations, he called and was like, "Hey, I'm taking a different job. Would you have an interest going there with me?" And at that time, he took Hillsdale College, which is Division II. At the time, it was in the GLIAC, the Great Lakes Intercollegiate Conference. Subsequently moved to the GMAC. And so I was like, yeah, sure. I'll do whatever. I'm just trying to get in. I'm just trying to be back in a team environment, to be honest with you. And so Coach Tharp ended up taking me to Hillsdale. And I took a, 95% pay cut, explained to my mom why I wouldn't have any benefits anymore and why I was living in a giant house with a bunch of players. And, it went smooth, as you might imagine.
Well, before you take us to the step that it seems like a lot of guys on our podcast go through, and that's the insanity step where they take a pay cut and go chase the crazy basketball dream of coaching. But who was some of the guys on that team that you coached out in Denver that you were volunteering with?
Yeah, so we had, oh man, I'll forget some people, but we had Von Wafer, who was a really good scorer, played in the NBA for a period of time for the Rockets, I think he ended up. And I was about as like low level of a person as you could possibly be. And this was before the D League was, it's a little, I think, more professionalized now, and it's a little bit more attached as like a feeder system to the NBA teams. Back then, we had two or three teams that were associated with the 14ers. And so it was really a collection of guys just playing and each one kind of filling into different organizations. And so Vaughn was a really good player. Pooh Jeter, who went on to have a great career in Europe, played for us for a period of time and is still, he might be in the NBA now as an assistant. We had a big guy named Lou Amundsen who played in the NBA for a period of time as well. Elton Brown, who's a good big out of Virginia, played with us. An Ivy League young guy who was Eric Amundsen, I want to say. I may be saying his last name wrong. Julius Hodge came through for a period of time doing kind of getting back from an injury, if I remember right. So he was around a little bit, who obviously was a really high draft pick and was a true NBA guy. PJ Tucker was with us for a brief time and obviously went on to have tremendous career both in Europe and here. So yeah, it was a really unique experience, to be honest, because I was a Division III guy, private liberal arts, suburban kid, and to see these guys come from all over and really compete as much as anything was a pretty unique experience, and to see just kind of the professional game with so many young professionals, because most of those guys at that point were really young guys trying to break in. It was really cool. I mean, it was really cool, and honestly, it shaped a good amount of how I view certain things in our business to this day.
And Coach, when you look at making that move, Fortune 500 to kind of helping out, the G League or the D League, then talk about that leap of faith that you got to make. Because I know on social media a lot it's shown the jobs that don't make any money and stuff. Just talk about like what it was about coaching or what that leap was that made you get into it.
Yeah, I mean, I think to start with the G League, or D League then, it was really just being lost in my life, to be truthful. I had moved to Denver. My girlfriend and I broke up again. Not a good idea. Broke up, and I'm sitting in this city, and I worked out of my apartment. So the job I had in Chicago let me keep it and move to Denver and do it out of my apartment at a time where that was not normal. Now it'd be very normal. Back then it was not normal. And so I had this apartment. I literally knew nobody. I mean, I did no office to go to. I had no family. I had no nothing. And I was pretty lost. And so I felt like basketball was always a kind of a guiding light for me in terms of my friendships, my relationships, my desire to be a part of a group. And basketball fulfilled a lot of that. And so getting into the D League was really about that, was about trying to reconnect to something that was important to me. Now, the decision to go to Hillsdale and to kind of give up my professional life as it was probably stupid. I mean, in reality, I think my mom was probably right in her advice to me of just how I should be thinking, but it felt like a calling. And I think if I was 25, maybe I wouldn't have been as free to make that kind of decision. But I was 23 and I didn't really have the specific direction I was trying to pursue. And to be honest, I was lucky. I was lucky that my parents were willing to pay my car insurance. You know what I mean? Like Coach Tharp and his family were willing to feed me anytime I needed a meal, and so I was lucky in those ways, but there absolutely is a leap of faith that, right or wrong, was a big part of my journey. And I think we do see that a lot now about, volunteer positions and low money and people kind of talking about how, hey, you got to do this. And you might have to do it, but not everybody's able to do it. And so I feel really lucky to have been able to make that choice and have enough freedom to do that. And then from there, you just put your head down and you work, and that's really, from that point on, it's about all I did, is work and try to make an effort. And I subsequently met my wife when I moved to Hillsdale, but I mean, she'll tell you the same thing. I worked. It was her and my job. And that's kind of been the story of it. Now we have children, but my family and my job. And those are the things that, I focused on for a very long time, and to a large degree still is about all I'm focused on.
Was your family a basketball family, or was this really their first time, other than you playing, seeing any of this?
Yeah, that's one of the most interesting parts. Like, we have no basketball background, period. And so, like, my brother's an MD, PhD doctor at the University of Michigan. My sister's a school teacher in Chicago. My dad was a lifetime kind of salesperson. My mom kind of did a variety of things, including some sort of school secretary type stuff. Like, I'm, with the exception of Coach Tharp and our assistant coach Juckum, when I was in college, like, those were my sole ties to college basketball. And I think it's kind of given me an edge in a lot of ways to how I approach my job, is that I'm not someone who I didn't have the benefit necessarily of knowing people in the business or having family in the business. But I think to a large degree, while that may have been difficult on the front end, has helped me over the course of my career, because it's kind of driven me. There's been a source of motivation of trying to do a good job and trying to kind of sort of blaze my own trail with again a bunch of help. So it's not, that sounds much more simple than it probably is, but kind of blaze my own trail, at least within my family, and certainly my family's investment in me and my siblings and my parents' support of me has been really, really freeing to allow me to pursue this professionally, because I've missed a lot of baptisms, a lot of weddings, a lot of birthday parties, and my family does all that stuff together in Chicago. And I missed a lot of that stuff over the years, and never felt judged by my parents, never felt judged by my brother and sister and their families. And that has been really a huge lifeline for what can be a lonely profession. It can be a profession that's you sacrifice certain things that are difficult to sacrifice. But their support was huge for me.
Coach, let's hop back into Hillsdale, Michigan, and how you guys got there and what y'all did, kind of building that program, and then where that takes you from there.
Yeah, I mean, that's a world away, from coming down here and being in Hillsdale. I mean, it's a world away. It was a small community, kind of in the south central part of Michigan. So imagine, for those of us that can, imagine Ohio and Indiana come together, and immediately north of that into Michigan is Hillsdale. And it's a small, very conservative, high academic school in a small community. And so, but it competes in Division II and competes in the GLIAC. And the GLIAC, when we arrived, was really outstanding. Grand Valley State and the University of Findlay were two of the best teams in the country. And I remember sitting in Coach Tharp's living room. We had most of the team over, if not all the team over, and we were watching the exhibitions. And back then, like, Division II versus Division I exhibitions were a big deal. They didn't happen as often. Now they don't have much anymore, for that matter, but they were a really big deal. And literally in the same preseason of our first season, Findlay beat Ohio State and Grand Valley beat Michigan State. And I can remember the guys leaving Coach's house, and I just kind of stayed back, and I looked at Coach and I was like, what the hell are we doing? These are the guys we got to beat, and it was like, it felt like a huge mountain to climb, there's no doubt. And, Grand Valley went on to maybe got beat in the Final Four of the Elite Eight by the eventual national champion. Findlay that year got beat by Grand Valley in the regional final, and the next year won the national title. And so they were elite programs with veteran guys. But we knew we had our work cut out for us. And Coach he's an incredible basketball coach, and he's a tremendous person with a big personality, and is really connected with everybody he's around. And so I had tremendous amount of confidence in his leadership, and really just did what I was told for the most part, at least for the first 3 years. Just pretty much did what I was told as much as I could. And we managed to put together a good roster and really have a good group of guys that bought in. We believe, and I believe to this day, of really trying to build a family, try to build a group that feels deeply connected to each other. And ideally with guys that are going to be around as long as we can keep them around, so that they have the shared experience of going through tough things so that they can persevere to get to the good things. And so in our 5th year there, we won the league, won the regular season, got beat in the conference championship. We ended up getting beat in the first round of the NCAA tournament. but it was a really good team, and we built to that gradually. And our next year we were good. We just couldn't quite find a point guard to kind of sustain us, but we were a really good team the next year. And honestly, the year we won the league, coach just kind of said to me, "Hey, you need to start looking for jobs. Like, you're old enough, you're about to get married, I just got married, I guess. This is the time." And I'm kind of like, I don't want to go anywhere. Like, I'm enjoying this. Like, I like our team. I like our kids. My wife was from Hillsdale. I'm like, I'm kind of good. And he's like, I know. He's like, I don't want you to leave, but like, you got to start. You got to go through the process so that if you can do some of this stuff, you can get that experience. And so I did it, and I had no idea what I was doing. None. Applying for whatever, anything in the Midwest, just sort of putting my name out there, D3, D2, didn't matter. I had no clue. And I got a couple phone interviews, and every time I hung up the phone, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I got no clue what I'm trying to tell these people. And so flash forward a year, and we were good again. Flash forward a year, and he's like, you got to go back through it. And I'm like, okay, I'll do it. And he's like, you're not going to get anything, just so you know, but you got to go back through it. And I'm like, okay, cool. Well, he goes off to Greece. He goes to spend like 8 days in Greece doing some camps and going on a little vacation. And while he's gone, I go on 2 interviews within the league, and I get offered both jobs, and he's not even in the country. And so I'm like, I'm trying to FaceTime him. I'm trying to like, Coach, we got to talk. Like, I don't know what's going on. Like, you got to help me, going through the whole thing. And, but that Hillsdale time was special. It's my wife's hometown, so that's a big deal. My in-laws still live there to this day. It was a really special experience to be young, to be with a head coach that I had so much respect for. He's the godfather of my daughter. Like, he was my best friend, and is my best friend in a lot of ways. And so it was a unique and special time where it was about basketball and family pretty exclusively. And we had a good time. We had a really good time doing it.
So where does that take you next? I feel like we're getting segued in. You had 2 job offers. Where does that take us to now?
I ended up going to Ohio Dominican University in Columbus, Ohio, which is Division II. It was in the league. My wife's brother actually lives in Columbus, and so it dovetailed really well. But I got offered that job while I was on the interview at Northern Michigan University, which is also in the league, in the opposite, as you can imagine, the opposite end of it geographically. And so my wife had actually gone up to the interview with me, and I really liked Northern a lot. It was a cool place, cold now, snow all the time, but really liked it. And my wife had been there on the interview with me. And when I hopped in the car to start driving back to Hillsdale, because we had a visit the next day from a high school point guard. And so I'm driving back, it's, I don't know, 11-hour drive. And we're going, and I'm talking for the first, had to be an hour. And I'm just like, I really liked it. This was cool. This is great. This is, all this stuff. And I look over, and my wife is just crying, tears streaming down her face. And I'm like, honey, what's wrong? She's like, I don't think I can live here. And I'm like, oh no. Well, I've been talking about how great it is this whole time. She's like, I'll do whatever we have to do, but I don't think I can live here. And I hadn't told her yet that while I was on the break during the interview, Ohio Dominican had offered me the job. And so I was like, well, the good news is Ohio Dominican offered me the job. And she literally, tears dried up immediately. She's like, okay, good. We're in the clear. And so, so I took off to go to Columbus, Ohio, and take over Ohio Dominican.
Obviously, the transition from assistant coach to head coach is a big one, but you're doing it in the same league. Did that help you just with, familiarity and what you needed? That's a cool, I'm sure playing against Hillsdale was a little different, but it's got to be a pretty cool transition.
It was helpful in terms of the league and the region, even, you know what I mean? The idea of having some familiarity of, who to schedule, who not to schedule, you know what I mean? Like, just a little bit of feel for, hey, what can I expect from this program or that program? That was very helpful. There were challenges, Ohio Dominican had won 1 game in the league in each of the previous 2 years. And so, as you can imagine, it wasn't exactly like turnkey, and it was, there was a lot of losing to get to winning, there was a lot of dealing with things and trying to not even rebuild a program necessarily, because ODU didn't have a tremendous history of success. And so it was literally building it from the ground up, and we managed to recruit some really good players, some really good kids. And little by little, we got better. Each year we got a little bit better and we showed improvement each year. And so I think it helped us to sustain that. And being familiar with the league gave us a lot of good benchmarks, a lot of good, okay, we feel like we're in line with this program now. Okay, what does that mean? Okay, now we feel like we're a little better. We can compete, with these folks. Okay, what does that mean? And because I had enough historical kind of knowledge, I do think it allowed me to set a better vision, and have a better, even if that was just personal for what my own expectation should be. Being in the same league as your mentor is maybe not something I would recommend for everybody. I mean, there are real challenges, to that, from a relationship standpoint. Just from hey, I need advice. It's very difficult to call, essentially a rival coach, right, in the league, even if that is the person that would be your first phone call when you have questions. So that was challenging, and playing them was like, it was like going to the dentist. It was, first of all, coach does a great job and they really guard, but just the emotion was like really difficult to handle, honestly, early on. Probably the whole time, but especially early on. And they were good and we were not good. And so you kind of had this whole thing swirling of, we're probably going to get our butts kicked, which is never a fun feeling. We've all walked into a game where you kind of felt that way, and it's not a good feeling. But you also have somebody that, you want to beat, but you also have a tremendous amount of respect for. And so there's just a lot going on with all those games. And so we played some great games with Hillsdale. But being in the league was beneficial. We ended up switching leagues early on in my time, and Hillsdale moved as well. And so that was kind of a unique thing, because all the knowledge I had of the GLIAC, only some of it mattered once we went to the GMAC, which had kind of a different group of teams. So that was a unique experience.
That's I've been on the other side of it. I've had 4 assistants that I've coached against, 3 of them that have went to my league as head coaches. And that's always a weird deal. You really try your hardest to not make it the normal game, at the same time make it the normal game, and that's just hard to juggle. It's a weird. I definitely know what you're talking about from the other side of it, at least, and that's a different thing.
And it's because you want it not to be normal. Like I always felt like with Coach Tharp personally, and even the staff who were former players and friends, like I didn't want it to be normal for us. Like I wanted it to be special, to be honest with you. Like I wanted that part to be special, but like for all my players, I wanted it to feel normal. Now they knew, right? Like they, our guys, they all have that inherent sense of like, yeah, this matters a little more. And that was the difficult thing, is to try to like level that stuff out of, hey, we're approaching this the same way, but like every single time we played them, there is no doubt, at least from our end, it was more intense. There's no doubt it felt different in terms of how we competed than a normal regular season game, at least. Like there was a little more there, and that was it was unique.
Well, they always say if you want to know if you got true friendship in coaching, you either recruit against them or play against them, and you'll know pretty quick.
That's a fact. That's a fact. Coach and I would always before our games, we'd like duck away someplace private and just kind of like text and like meet up, because we played double headers with the girls. So while like the girls played, we would like find a private meeting room, or and just like sit down for about 5 minutes. And it was truly those friendship moments, and then when you got to the end of it, you're like, good luck. And that was like the one moment when you walked out of that meeting. It was the one moment where you were kind of like, hey, there's no winners and losers today. Like, we're all going to be okay. And then you get on the floor and it's like, nope, we're right back to, we want to win, they want to win, and you're right back to it.
All right. So with your time there, kind of what takes you to the next spot?
Yeah, well, we ended up kind of building Ohio Dominican, and we had a really good team. And it took us a little bit to come together, but we had a really good team my 5th year. That was the first time we kind of had seniors that had gone through it for 4 years with us, and took us a little bit to kind of get it together in that season. But we really started playing well down the stretch, and probably the last 2 months of the season, we were a really good basketball team, and we were really good defensively. We had a little point guard named Shamar Waugh, who's now in the Denver Nuggets organization on staff, who was a really good on-ball defender and was really fast with the ball, a little lefty. And his senior year, which was that year, he really started to shoot the ball better. And what it did for us is it gave us a little bit more floor spacing, and it really made people come guard him. And we had shooters kind of around him, and we had a really good big kid. And so things just kind of fell into place, I think, for the program during that stretch of time. And, we ended up reeling off like 9 or 10 straight wins to close the year out. We won the league tournament. We won a really dramatic game at Finley, who was the number 1 seed and the host. We won like with a steal and full court layup, like at the buzzer, essentially. And so that took us to the league championship, which ended up against Hillsdale, of course, in the league championship. And we ended up winning the league title and got to go to the NCAA tournament. And we were a really good team, but because we weren't great early in the season, it took us a little bit. We were the 8 seed, and we played Ferris State, who was the 1 seed and the host and the eventual national champion. And we played really well for about 28 minutes. We played really well, and we kind of had a rough stretch in the kind of middle of the second half and really couldn't sustain what we needed to. And it was about that time that my daughter was born, who's our second. And so I have an 8-year-old and 6-year-old now. But at that point, my daughter was born on the Tuesday prior to the league tournament. So I literally went from the hospital to my house to pick up a bag, and my father-in-law drove me to the league tournament. And I arrived on the day of our first game. And, 3 days later, we won the league. And so it was kind of the first time where I had to kind of start thinking about what might be next. Was I happy in this particular situation? Was this something I felt like made sense for my family over the medium term or long term? And what was best? And my wife and I were really happy in Columbus. We really liked the neighborhood we lived in the city. Our kids were at that point 2 and a newborn. And so I interviewed for one job that offseason. It was Minnesota Duluth, and I didn't get that job. And I was really disappointed, to be candid. I mean, I was really disappointed. It felt like one of those times where, hey, this is the right time. This is the chance. This is you know what I mean? Like, oh, this dovetails well. And usually when you feel that way, right, that's when it doesn't happen. And it didn't happen. And I was disappointed. And I think kind of managing that was a big part of growth and a big part of really becoming what I would say a true adult, is having 2 little kids, having a wife, but getting myself to a place where I'm really focused, but can handle those kind of difficult things professionally. And we had a good year the next year. We were probably a little better, honestly, the next year, but we had a couple injuries, and I just don't think I did a good enough job as our head coach, the next year. I didn't manage a couple of relationships well enough, in my opinion, one in particular. And I just feel like we never played quite to the level we were capable of with any consistency. We had moments of it, but we didn't have it with any consistency. And that was on me. And we ended up getting beat in the first round of the conference tournament, and just kind of back in that same place. I felt like we had done a good job. We had lost a lot of resources at Ohio Dominican over my time. So we had lost a lot of scholarship money. The setup was just very different at that point than it was when I had arrived, and really got changed from the moment I arrived, essentially. And during my first season, we started having things taken away, and that stuff takes a toll on you. You have a family, you're trying to win, you're trying to do a good job, you're trying to sustain a career, right? And so that stuff took a toll on me. And no lie, my wife texted me a link to a Hoop Dirt posting for the University of North Georgia. I'm not kidding you. That was the first time I'd ever heard of the University of North Georgia, was that text from my wife. And, we're Midwest people. I'm Chicago, she's Michigan. That's all we knew, and the only places we lived. And I told her flat out, I was like, honey, like, I appreciate this, but I don't think they're looking for me, for your husband, and that's no shot at me. I'm just, you're out of region. It's not the typical pathway in our business, not at our level, especially, it's not typical. And she's like, I think we'd like it. I was like, okay. And she's like, you need to apply. And I was like, yes, honey. So I'm smart enough to do that. I'm like, yes, honey. Well, I ended up getting, kind of the Skype interviews were big at that point, So I did a Skype interview with the committee, and I really had no connection to the job. at all. I didn't know a single person here. I don't have family down here. Like there's literally no reason that I should have gotten beyond the video interview, except for a weird, like kind of twist of fate where the associate athletic director, assistant athletic director, whichever her title was, at Duluth, at Minnesota Duluth, was named Karen Homies. And Karen was very nice. And I happened to see her at Ohio Dominican, my job, where the women's Elite Eight was being hosted. So the women's Elite Eight was being held at Ohio Dominican that year. And I looked down on the floor from my office. I kind of was like over top of the floor, and I saw Karen. And I just walked down there just to say hi and introduce, not sort of reintroduce myself. I hadn't really spoken to her since the year prior when I didn't get the job. She was super nice, incredibly nice woman. And she was like, "Hey, if there's anything I can ever do to help you, let me know. Let me know." And I'm standing on the floor at Ohio Dominican, and I look up, and behind her are the logos for all the Elite Eight teams, all the women's teams that are in the Elite Eight. And the University of North Georgia's women's team was in the Elite Eight. And I was just like, I'm seeing the logo, not dissimilar to the one you can see behind me. And I'm like, man, am I really going to do this right here? But I'm standing here, so I'm going to do it. And I said, I had a video interview at North Georgia and it seems like a place I would fit and maybe I could do a good job at. If you know anybody there and you could put it in a good word, that'd be appreciated. And she literally, her eyes lit up and she's like, Lindsay Reeves, who was our AD at the time. And I'm like, yep, that's the AD. And she's like, her and I are really good friends. And I'm just like, holy crap. Like, this is like pure shot in the dark. And she's like, I have your cell phone. Make sure you keep an eye on it. I'm like, okay. And literally within 6 hours, she had me connected to Lindsay, who was at the event, and had our women's coach at ODU in contact with the women's coach at North Georgia, Buffy. And they had all talked and were like, hey, come back tonight and we'll meet up in the lobby. And I'm just like, what is going on? Like, I'm like, honey, we got this thing. When we head back, we'll go. And my wife's like, okay, let's do it. So we go and we're standing up, in my office waiting for the game prior to go to halftime or whatever it was. And I could see Mrs. Reeves and Mary Rob Plunkett and Mac, who's one of the VPs for business here at the time, who just retired. And I could see him through the window. And my daughter, who's, barely a year old, is literally smashing her face on this window and like blowing air bubbles, like babies do. And I'm just like, these people are going to think we are just nuts. It's like, we're standing up here hanging out. And yeah, we met down in the lobby. I had to walk right past my boss to go to this meeting. It was not comfortable. And we met for probably 10, 12 minutes at most. And it was really, we didn't talk about anything that we hadn't talked about on the video interview. She essentially said, like, why do you want this job? Why do you think you'd be good at it? And that was about all we talked about, and it was very pleasant, all that kind of stuff. And so I get back up to the office and I'm like, honey, that was probably my on campus. Like, let's get back to work. You know what I mean? Let's get moving. And so, but literally within 36 hours, I was one of the finalists to come on campus and yeah, flew down here and it's, about less than a week later, I was the head coach. Probably less than a week later, I'd driven down here already. I mean, it was pretty cool. It was pretty cool.
What was
Coach,
your thoughts?
listening.
What was your thoughts about your first time on campus? I mean, I know it's a pretty place, obviously campus, but just the comparisons of being a Midwest guy to now you're in the South region, here, Southeast region with mountains.
The mountains are the first thing, honestly. Like as I drove up 400, in my rental car from the airport, I can remember being, I didn't know where the heck I was at the time, but I'm assuming I was either between Cumming and Dawsonville or between Dawsonville and Dahlonega. And you start to see the kind of horizons of the mountains, the kind of the silhouette, so to speak. And I was just like, and you see the Georgia pines kind of lined, and there was less development even 5 years ago, honestly, than there is now. And so there were even more pines kind of lining the road. And I was like, yeah, this is not like, we have no elevation in the Midwest. It is flat everywhere. We got lakes, but we don't have anything else. And so I pulled into Dahlonega and I got to walk the square kind of right when I got here. And I stayed in the Smith House right around the corner from campus. And truthfully, it reminded me of Marquette, Michigan, where Northern Michigan is. That was the first thing that came to mind. And I called my wife, and as I was walking around, I had probably 2 hours to kill till my first kind of function. And that's what I remember being very struck by. The environment, obviously the sort of idea of the weather was something that it was nice out, and it's very sunny here a lot more often than it is in the Midwest. And so those are the things that struck me. But campus is just so nice, and the square is just such a unique kind of community feel to it. And I thought that stuff was evident like from the moment I stepped foot here.
And the Smith House fried chicken, did that make you know you were definitely not in the Midwest anymore?
That's a fact. That's a fact. It is delicious. And it's delicious.
All right, so
Coach,
you do the
it's funny to hear
interview.
your side of it with when you talked about blazing your own trail earlier. As guys that are Georgia guys like me and Corey, we start hearing all these names. Well, no one ever heard your name. They were talking about the interviews and all the different people, and then all of a sudden it's like, wait, the guy from Ohio, who like, And it's funny how it's worked out with just how you've kind of immersed yourself. I remember y'all's first year there. Adam came over to watch my workouts at Brookwood at 6 a.m. and it was like you guys just hit the ground running. I mean, and it was impressive to see, what would be considered outsiders just hopping in and just getting right to it.
It was really important to us, and honestly, it's still important to us. It's honestly it's weirdly harder now than it was then, because now that we're more established, I think we have maybe a more narrow recruiting pool. Not that we still like sort of evaluate the same breadth of players, but you get to a certain point where it becomes about efficiency, right? There's like an efficiency we have to operate with. And I think it's like we're not able to go to as much stuff now as weirdly we were then, but I do think it remains important and was important then too. We want Georgia guys, and we want to be connected, most especially to the North Georgia community, because it's I think a function of our university, but to the state at large. And I'm certain that we haven't done a good job in some ways and have done good jobs in other ways, right? Like some people have the experience that you had, Daniel, and probably other people felt like we didn't come around enough. I don't know. It's very difficult to walk that line. But I know that we've been incredibly blessed to have good players and good people from the state. And I think as much as that, like we just feel like we have a lot of friends now within the basketball community here. And I think we have a lot of people that through the work of our players and through Adam and through our entire staff, like respect our program. I think we've earned a certain level of respect, which leads to acceptance a lot of times, right? And it's been cool to go on that journey because like it's not lost on me that I'm not from here. It's not lost on me that I wasn't born and raised in Metro Atlanta. Like I can't change that. It's never going to be different. I'm always going to be from where I was from. But I think people have gained an understanding of who we are, for one, and know that we're about the right things and we're really genuine. Even if that genuine isn't what people want in every situation or our opinion doesn't match it, I think they know that we're very truthful, very transparent, very forthcoming. And I think we've tried to build it the right way. And I think we've been really blessed to be able to do it here, meaning North Georgia as a university, Dahlonega as a community, but like North Georgia broadly down to Atlanta, like to be in this kind of place is very neat for us.
Well, one thing I will say for people listening and watching that are not North Georgia folks, I was in North Georgia for 3 years at Truett McConnell. The last 3 years it was junior college, and North Georgia is different, just like Atlanta. Metro Atlanta is different, just like South Atlanta is different, just like South Georgia is different. But man, people are not as welcoming in some aspects because the mountains are different and they own them. You know what I mean? And they're always scared Walmart's coming to take it all away. That was my experience there. But great people, like unbelievable people, and love basketball. So it was neat that you were able to give them, be a part of what they all wanted. They had received it a lot in women's basketball with Buffy winning for so many years. and they had a little taste in the NAI run in men's basketball, but to get it, to the level that you guys got it with that unbelievable arena that you have there on campus with the mountain views, I mean, unbelievable. But I will say this, all the people that you recruited, they loved you and welcomed you, and all the people that you didn't still dislike you. That's just a normal deal, right? But and then all the teams you beat still dislike you and say you're not from here. But all the ones that were with you when you won, they love you to death. And I think it's an unbelievable run. So tell us a little bit about how you got to the run. First year to the run. Give us the Cliff Notes version here.
Yeah, it was COVID hitting, in March of our first year was just created a environment for everybody, not just us, but not being from here. We were sitting at our kitchen table in April of, what would that be, 2020, can't go anywhere, nothing's happening. And we literally have almost no connections, right? We have some of the ones like Daniel's describing where we were able to cultivate, but like we're everything's on video, everything's as best we can word of mouth, but also like we don't know anyone well enough, they don't know us well enough to truly recommend somebody or not recommend somebody. And so we just did our best to make good decisions, and some were good, some were not good, right? It goes both ways, but we had a really good group of freshmen, that joined us, and four of them, or I guess three of them, because one was a transfer at that same time, just graduated 2 weeks ago. And it's amazing to have seen their development, and they really spearheaded it. We have a lot of people supporting them, you know what I mean? A lot of people supporting them that are still in the program, but from what they walked into, which was a COVID shortened season where we played 10 games total, we got shut down 4 or 5 times for 7 days at a time. We had 12 games canceled over the course of the season. We started our season by opening up league play, beating Flagler, who ended up going to the Final Four. And, we got beat by 35 at Aiken 3 days later. And that was about how the whole year went. It was just up and down, and it was start, stop. Hey, you got to go home because you're, a guy in your class has COVID. So you got to go home for 7 days. No, you're good to play. You other 8, you can play. You 7, you're home. I mean, it was really difficult, but we gave a lot of young people a chance to play, and we've really done that throughout our time here. And I think it's really helped us. And so we got better little by little. We went 500, I think. So we went 500 my first year, with Coach Falk, a lot of Coach Faulkner's guys who were great people. And, we're dealing with their own transition for him going to kind of a development role within the department. They played really hard for us. The COVID year, we were like 2-7 or something. I don't know. We barely played. And then we were 500 year 3. And then year 4, we had a lot of juniors that really stepped up. We won 20 games, went to the NCAA tournament for the first time, won a game, in the NCAA tournament. And we could really feel that improvement. And then coming into this year, we were picked to win the league. I think Aiken should have been picked to win the league personally. They won the league the year prior and returned a lot of people. We were picked to win it. They ended up winning the regular season by 1 game again over us. But we were a good team all year. We were a good team all year. We didn't play great in the middle of February, but we were a good team all year. And so I think our guys had a ton of confidence about what we could do. And I think we've lost at the buzzer in each of the past 2 years in games that would have clinched us a piece of the regular season championship. Augusta beat us in a heartbreaker at our place 2 years ago, and this past year, Lander beat us on a buzzer beater. Aiken beat us late. And so just really a lot of scars in the program competitively. And so I think all of us believed we could play at the level we needed to at the most important time. And we were able to. We won the league tournament down at Aiken, and played pretty well. Probably the middle of the semifinal on, we played pretty well. And we played very well in the NCAA tournament back at our place. We ended up hosting it. Played very well against Wingate, I thought, particularly the second half. Played very well against Catawba really the entire game and controlled the game. And played very well against Lander as well, who had beat us twice already and beat him in the regional final. And so really, really big deal around here. It's you have a lot of pride, right? There's a lot of pride in your players, in your staff, for all the work everybody did. And it's cool to see everybody get that kind of positive reinforcement, but you could feel it from the community, both university and Dahlonega. Like you could feel the sort of joy and the amount of people behind us. And the regional final was an experience that, we may never have again. I mean, it was 4,000 people, standing room only, probably 98% North Georgia fans, maybe more. And it was loud and raucous and high energy from the moment the warm-up buzzer went off. And it was just really, really cool. And sort of win in that as well made for quite a rush.
Now, how do you take that excitement from winning, for the first time to, all right, now we got to change gears. Now let's get out and let's get on the road and let's go play again. How was that preparation for your guys in their first time?
It was you're so excited to still be playing that I think it was not that hard, but I think there was an energy drain that went on, because that's a Tuesday night. And, we're getting off the floor probably at 11 p.m. People are walking out of the gym, maybe later, by the time the celebrating and just the kind of nets and the around and in the locker room, all that kind of stuff. Right. And, Wednesday is a wash. Like, you know what I mean? Like nobody's doing anything but licking their wounds. And so, it was weird. And we had to leave Saturday morning. And so, or Saturday, I guess, lunchtime. And so it was a quick turnaround in some ways. But I do think it took energy out of us, and we could feel it at the beginning of the Elite Eight game, to be honest. Like we had been so excited and so amped, and the environment of those regional finals all over the country is so it's such a high level of crowd, such a high level of enthusiasm that when you go to the Elite Eight, you're in an arena. We're in Evansville, Indiana. Like, obviously, nobody's near there. We're the closest team, I think. Us and Ferris State, two closest teams, and we were like 6.5, 7 hours away. So the energy kind of is lower, but the level of play is higher from both teams. And that was a unique experience that I don't think we had really anticipated. And we came out and played really poorly early on, fought back and were fine, but really early on. And so that turnaround was, I don't know that we did it great. I really don't, but you're just so happy to be playing. I have to admit, like, you're just so excited to be one of the last 8 teams. And when you're one of the last 8 teams, it's maybe the first time where you have that sense of like, man, maybe you can win the whole damn thing. You know what I mean? Because now it's like, it feels so close. Corey, you probably felt that a little bit, back when you beat Salt Lake that year at I think it was at Hutch, right? Like, you get to a certain point where it's like, wait a second. Now it's not like weird to think about the biggest prize. And I don't think we handled that poorly, but it was unique. It absolutely was unique.
I would think the thing that's so different with D2 probably than any level is the regionals, as they call them. You play teams that more than likely, a lot of them you are in your conference maybe, but you're playing teams you probably played throughout the year, some of them 2-3 times. So it's going to be your 4th time. I mean, it's so weird. And then to go to where it really is, like you said, now it's the national, quote, you're 3 games away, man.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Crazy deal. Who was the teams, you mentioned them. Was there any teams during your run that was a 3rd or 4th time seeing them? Or did
Lander was our 3rd time seeing them. And they beat us the first 2 times. And then we ended up playing all 3. The SAC had 3 teams tied for the conference championship. And so we played Lincoln Memorial on the road in the regular season and were able to beat them, and in a big winning streak that they had at home. And then we played Wingate in the first round, who was a co-champion of the SAC, and Catawba, who was a co-champion. So we ended up playing all 3 of the SAC co-champions.
Wow.
But it's pretty rare. It's pretty rare that we didn't play more teams that we had a history with. Because you're right, like, our leagues we had 3 in this year, we had 4 in last year. Oftentimes you'll see rematches of conference championship games. You know what I mean? That appear in the first round of the conference tournament or in the national tournament. So it does make those regionals. That's part of what makes them such a big deal, I think, honestly, because it truly is you play each other all regular season, and then really only one of you comes out, period. We probably had 2 or 3 teams that might have been worthy, heck, we might have had 2 or 3 in our league that might have been worthy of coming out. And so to be the one that comes out, it really is a badge of honor, and I've for my entire career, there's a respect I've given to the team that comes out of it from my region. And to be that team is kind of surreal still, to be honest with you. It's a little bit surreal, but also an incredible feeling.
And you were in what some would argue the best D2 conference in the world, Great Lakes, for so long. And then to make it when you were in the South, which you probably never thought you'd even be in, what a crazy deal. You were in D2 Haven up there, and to come down here and do it, even though there are good teams, obviously, but still, that's a unique, interesting story.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, it's funny to have the perspective of both regions. You know what I mean? Because it is very informative, and I think that helps us in some different ways of how to approach program building, how to approach, even just tactically. Because my background, the basketball, just like the same reason the Big Ten and the SEC are different when you watch them. It's the same thing at our levels, same thing at the high school level, right? Like way basketball is played, the overriding strategic or personnel type that each region has is different. And so to have kind of a deep experience in both has been unique. And the reality is the Peach Belt is one of the 5 best conferences in the country, I would say. It is a really difficult league to win. It's a really difficult league to play in night to night. We have no bad teams. Like there are no teams where, hey, we're okay. If we just show up tonight and we're stable, we're going to be okay. Like that's not the league we operate in. And so I think it leaves all of us very battle tested and makes us all better, but also creates an incredible challenge, year to year.
Corey, are we ready for the lightning round? Are we?
Can't wait, man. Can't wait. You want me to tip it off, or you got it, boss?
I'll go. I got one. I'll start out with. So we'll.
All right, go ahead.
So Coach, these are a little bit quicker. They're some are basketball, some are not. Corey gets to ask you some fun ones here, I'm sure. Here's my first question. We're gonna start out. I don't want you to make anybody mad, but Appleton, Wisconsin winters or Dahlonega, Georgia summers? Which one's worse?
Oh, Appleton winters. Not even close. not even close. Oh man. That's a whole podcast in itself. Just me walking from my dorm to the gym in the winter my freshman year. That's a podcast in and of itself.
You'll handle the 90s over the 2 months of snow.
4 months of snow.
And you get a lot of horse flies in the mountains. A lot of horse flies. I'm telling you, I've never seen that. But all right, so my question, I'll start with what I love the most, food. Give us the best place to eat at all 4 stops that you've had. You got one place to eat. You're in Denver today. You got one place to eat. You're Hillsdale, one place to eat. You got
Let me go back to Appleton first. So in Appleton, best place to eat. Best place to eat was either Wooden Nickel on College Avenue, which had great burgers and great chippers, which are essentially like fried potato chips, or Frank's Pizza, tremendous thin crust pizza. I don't have anything for Denver. I barely remember. I just drank beer and ate pizza, so I got no idea what happened in Denver. Chicago, any of the deep dish places would be my first choice. Lou Malnati's, Gino's, Giordano's, any of those. Let's see, Hillsdale, Michigan, got to be Lane 17, the bowling alley, was owned and operated by my eventual father-in-law, had pretzel bun cheeseburgers that were tremendous, had pizza, just outstanding. Columbus, Ohio, that's tough. A lot of good restaurants in Columbus. I'm a little partial to the breakfast spot at the end of the street in Clintonville called Wildflower Cafe. We also had like a bar and grill burger place called The Crest that had tremendous cheeseburgers down the street. So I'll go with one of those. There are a ton that I could go with there, though, to be honest with you. And then Dahlonega, Georgia. I don't want anyone to feel outed, but
make a sponsor mad.
I love them all. No, I love Spirits downtown. Huge fan of Spirits, is a kind of a bar food burger place. Johnny B's Thin Crust Pizza, you got to go with. Shenanigans, the tremendous environment. We got a new Nighthawk. Oh man, I'm gonna mess up the name. Nighthawk Cafe, I think it's called. That's doing a really good job in the square. Kilwin's Ice Cream, which I just love. You can tell I'm unhealthy. I haven't named one place that's healthy at all. Corner Kitchen, a great deli that's kind of just off the square that I love. And I'm certain I'm missing some, but those are. Public House, new place. Love Public House. Do a great job, kind of bar food, and have some sort of slightly upscale options as well, some pastas that I like. So I could keep going on Delonico food though. That's not even a lightning round.
So you're good on that one though. You keep all the sponsors happy, so you're good.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to ask you a good one. Corey's probably going to ask you a negative one here in a minute. I'm going to ask you is to go back to your playing days and then your coaching days, the most memorable game as a player and as a coach. It can be a win, a loss, but just something that sits with you.
Yeah, most memorable game as a player is my junior year. We got beat in the Elite Eight, essentially at the buzzer to Wisconsin Stevens Point, who ended up winning the national title. It was Wisconsin Stevens Point from Stevens Point, Wisconsin, as you imagine, and Lawrence University from Appleton, Wisconsin, playing in the Elite Eight in Puget Sound, Washington. And there was about 150 people at most in the crowd. And Stevens Point was tremendous. One of my good friends was one of their best players. They hit a jumper. Eric Moss, a big kid, hit a jumper from the baseline with about 5.5 seconds left. And we went to put us down 1 or 2, I don't remember. And I J-cutted. I was a point guard, tall, slow point guard. J-cutted our best player, who was National Player of the Year, either that year or the next year. Got a quick outlet to me, drove it up the floor, pitched it to one of my best friends, Jason Hollenbeck, wide open three. He was 6 for 7 up to that point. The horn goes off as it's in the air, rattles out. Season's over. Some people's careers over. It's devastating and exciting all at once. That's the most memorable as a player. As a coach, the regional final was. It's fresh, so I'm gonna pick 2 as a coach since that one's so fresh. I don't want to cop out to it, but that was the regional final was unlike anything I've ever experienced and may ever experience. It was so intense and such an exciting experience. The other one I would say is the semifinal of the conference tournament at the University of Findlay. Findlay was tremendous, was hosting. It was the 1 seed. We were down like 5 with like 35 seconds left. We had our big kid hit a 3. They split a pair of free throws. We had our good guard, Ronnie Williams, hit a handoff 3 to tie the game. There was like some sort of like clock didn't start, have to stop play, can't get a sub in, some of that kind of stuff happening. And so we had to stay small. And so we had a kid named Ryan Hoying who had multiple knee surgeries, having to guard their best player named Terrence Sullivan, who ended up playing in the D League. He was a really good player. And I'm just like, we're going to get beat because we can't sub. This is ridiculous. And Ryan Hoying ends up stealing the ball as it goes out of bounds, saves it, throws it. This is maybe, think top of the key extended right in front of our opponent's bench, throws it up the floor to Michael Scott, who receives it, no dribble, 1-foot layup, drops it through the net with 0.2 seconds left. And the place is dead silent. And our fans, 200 people, whoever came, are going berserk. And they inbounded, they can't get a shot off, and we win. And it was just like, that was an amazing finish. And, we got to play like literally 15 hours later, we tip up the final and we're in the locker room and I'm like, we're going to get our asses kicked. I don't know if I can say that. We're gonna get our butts kicked because we're just so high. And we ended up dominating the final. So that semifinals and the regional final are the most memorable games as a coach.
Awesome. All right, I'm going to ask you a positive and negative. I always have to throw a negative in there. Give us the best atmosphere you played in. May have answered it right then, but I would think it would probably be a little more recent. But best atmosphere, and then give us the worst gym you've ever coached in or played in. because there's some bad gyms in the small time hoops world, and we get some good ones on here in the podcast. So and don't feel bad. People know they're bad. They're not going to be.
There's a lot of repeat customers on that one too. There's a lot of.
I believe that.
People know the gyms are bad. They're not going to be mad at you. They'll wear it, with a badge of honor.
The best atmosphere was the regional final.
Yeah.
There's
I
no
would
doubt.
think that. Yeah.
It was intimate still, but there were so many people. And so it was like, it felt like everything was on. I mean, honestly, it felt like what I assume Cameron Indoor feels like. You know what I mean? It was just like, it was, and the stakes were so high. That absolutely is the best.
Well, my favorite thing about that is I've heard a lot of people say they were at that game. I'm not questioning them, but I'm questioning them. I don't think they were at that game. A lot of people claim they were there. Sort of like the Rick Camp for Brave fans, Rick Camp home run at like 2:30 a.m. in Atlanta on 4th of July, and the fireworks went off, and he was a relief pitcher that hit it. Everybody always says they were at that game. There were like 4 people at that game at that point. But anyway, go on with your story. I'm calling some people out if they're listening. Go ahead.
Oh man, the worst gym. I do not want to talk negatively about people, so this is tough.
No, they wear it like a badge of honor. It's the worst gym. We always get Emmanuel's older gym. You only know the nice one. We always get Bruton Parker. So you can give us one from another region. We get some every now and then because we do.
That's what I'm trying to think through. I'm trying to think through maybe out of the region, so it's less likely that they text me and ask me what the hell I'm talking about.
Or it could be a gym that no longer exists. That'll really.
I know that's what I would like to choose, but there's only 2 that are coming to mind, and they're both in the region, and so I'm trying to debate whether or not I should say them. Southern Wesleyan's gym was a challenging place for us.
That is tough. I've been there before. Very tough gym.
It's not big at all.
Correct. Very small.
But it's like on top of you, and like it wasn't real crowded when we played there. We played there twice now that I think about it. But like it feels so loud, and the bathroom is like in a weird place, and you're locked. It's just that was a tough one. And Erskine would be the other one. That was a similar feel. Though I would probably say Southern Wesleyan. I am certain there's something worse than that, but that's the one that comes to mind.
They have the rolled in bleachers, the outdoor aluminum bleachers on the inside. That's a rough.
Yeah. And you kind of come from the back. You enter the building from the back, or like the sort of side or back, and you don't feel like you're about to walk into a gym.
Correct.
And that's my answer, but I apologize.
Some people usually because I ask it, they'll say if we're talking locker rooms, they kill Clayton State because you have to use the bathroom with the fans.
Anytime.
The visiting team. So they always give me hell about it, like I'm the one who designed it or something. I'm fine with it. I think it's funny.
I got 2 things that bother me. If there's no showers or bathrooms in the locker room,
that's rough.
It's like, what are you supposed to do? Like anybody, players, like, what are you supposed to do? So I do, but I don't. Clayton State's gym itself, I think, is a cool, like, it's not big, but it's a cool kind of like atmosphere, in my opinion.
Well, in junior college, you have to always bring your own board and your own Sharpies because there's 90% chance you'll have neither in the locker room. That's always rough. And then usually you're in like a place that's not a locker room at most junior, not all junior colleges, but most junior colleges. So
I think I got spoiled a little bit because in the GLIAC, similar to the Peach Belt, a lot of them are state schools, and so
correct.
Their gyms are like, there's like a certain standard that they sort of like have to keep.
Correct.
So you don't get way far afield very often.
See, Coach, you missed the North Georgia NAIA days when the league was LaGrange, Bruton Parker, Southern Wesleyan, Piedmont. Because I was in the league, and you got to see a lot of bad gyms back then.
I was trying to think about my days at Lawrence because we played, D3 middle, Midwest. Like we played in all sorts of sort of unique environments. Like Edgewood College in Madison, Wisconsin, like just comes to mind. But I have like just little flashes of it because I was too young and dumb to really be paying attention yet.
All right, Bowles, your question. I've got 2 more, and then we can.
All right, so this is my last one. I'll get you. So as you hit your off season, is there a specific coach, team, concept that, man, like if I'm watching something and I want to watch some X's and O's or just see some good basketball, Is there an NBA team, a college team? Is there somebody that you just dive into in the summer and kind of check out?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the two things I try to make some effort to do in the summer is play NBA playoffs, because I don't watch much in the regular season. It's just not really in my schedule or lifestyle. And I just don't, the game is so different. So about really once we get to the second round of the playoffs, what we're in right now, like I will start to watch every fourth quarter pretty much of every game. Not at the time. Excuse me, not at the time, but I will watch it the next day just on YouTube TV or whatever. And I will dig into, and from there I might dig deeper into this or deeper into that. Um, and then I have started to make some effort to watch like European stuff on Synergy as best I can find it. And so like the Euro League Final Four. And so I'll try to watch those and then kind of use that. Like how we play our base O is actually was inspired by a European coach, because we had bigs who didn't really shoot it great. And that was like how he built his system. And so we sort of use that as inspiration, but I'm sort of not even at the point yet of finding who that team is, but I'll watch the EuroLeague Final Four and the playoffs of the second round on of the NBA, and that'll kind of be the foundation for me.
I got a good one here that I like to ask. It's probably my favorite one is what's the one time you can think of where maybe you thought you made it, you've arrived, you're a big time D2 head coach, maybe it was after playing in the Elite Eight, whatever it may be, and then you got humbled pretty quick. I mean, somebody on campus didn't even know who you were, didn't know you had a basketball team, thought you were the girls coach, picking up your daughter, she didn't even know you were playing then, or something, one of those moments. I always love those to hear from coaches.
Yeah. I hope my staff doesn't listen to this because they'll just be laughing at me. So we won the league on Saturday, whatever Saturday it was. And I go to a particular fast food restaurant 2 to 3 times a week in the community. Just, it's simple. I trust what I'm going to get. It's almost like routine more than it is like, oh man, like I love this more than something else. But I go there all the time and the same people help me all the time. And I wear North Georgia stuff literally every day, in season. I wear sweats and a t-shirt or a hoodie, whatever it is, every day. And so I'm I'm standing there and I'm ordering my sub, and the guy's like, "Oh, when do they play?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Well, when did they play?" And he pointed to my shirt because we were hosting the NCAA tournament. And I was like, No. When do we play? I was thinking to myself, like, I'm part of the team. I'm part of the team. I'm one of the coaches. And I didn't say that, but that's what, like, you have that moment where you're just like, wait, I come in here all the time. And he was like, and so we have this back and forth, and I'm like, oh, I'm the coach. And he's like, oh, great. That's awesome. And when do you guys play? And so I'm like filling them in. So I'm going to continue with this. I know it's lightning round. Flash forward to, we win the first 2 rounds. And on the Monday, I go back there. And he was like, you guys are playing tomorrow night. I'm like, yeah, you should come. I invite them all, the whole thing. And we win. It's incredible. I show up there again on Wednesday because, again, this is just like routine. It's totally monotonous for me. Yeah. Gets me away from my staff so they don't get annoyed with me. You know what I mean? Like, gets me out of the office. And he looks at me and he goes, when you're in here, you're so mild-mannered and you're so polite. And seeing you on the sidelines, you're like 2 different human beings. And I'm just like, yeah, I agree with you, man. I agree with you. But yeah, we won the league and I wear my stuff and I'm in there all the time. And he was like, oh, you support the team. So when's the team play?
That's a good one. I like it. All right. Last one here. I got you, before we let, do some closing stuff, but last one, who's the one coach that maybe you model yourself after? Do you have a coach or a coach you played for? Maybe be it, but is there anything that you kind of model everything you've done after?
Yeah, I mean, Coach Tharp is by far the biggest influence. I didn't work for a lot. I didn't work. He's the only person I ever worked for, and so obviously a big part of that. And I played for him, but Coach Tharp is a huge influence on me. Pat Juckham, who's the head coach at Washington University at St. Louis, the great Division III academic school and program, is a huge influence on me. Mike DeGeorge, who just got the Cal Poly job out in California, huge influence on me. Matt Lewis, who's the head coach at Wisconsin Oshkosh, is a huge influence on me. Those The Coach Tharp is the single largest influence and the only reason I'm coaching, period. Those other guys have a huge impact on me.
Gotcha. All right. Well, is there any closing things you would like to say before we get out of here? Anybody you want to thank, or anything you want to say that maybe you didn't get to say with us, or questions we didn't ask, or story, or anything you want to say?
No, I'm just really appreciative. I'm really appreciative of you guys having me on. And Daniel, some of the things you said earlier, like, do hit home for me. I'm very appreciative of people in our region being willing to accept us and sort of allow us to be a part of the basketball fabric here, because it is someone who didn't grow up here and is not from here, the close-knit nature of the coaching profession here, it's pretty unique and it's pretty cool, and the sort of through lines between high school, 4 years, 2 years, big schools, small schools, like the sort of depth of the relationships and the depth of history that kind of binds all those things together. I'm proud to at least be able to be some small part of it and to be involved in it and to be able to be around it. And so you guys are two people that do that. And there's obviously countless others. You can name 50 people here that contribute to that. And it is cool to learn about it. It's cool to be able to connect with so many people that try to do it the right way. And so I'm really proud to be able to kind of tap into that a little bit.
And when you won, everybody jumped on your bandwagon, and you're the best. But you were the best before that, and we really appreciate it. And we know good things have happened up there. Better things are coming. We already know it.
And Coach, real quick, I was going to ask you earlier, what the secret sauce was, and turning around 2 programs. But for anybody that listens, when they hear your detailed account of games from 20 years ago or 10, I think they can see it right away of how passionate you are about it and how much, every game, every possession is such a big deal. So we appreciate you sharing, which is awesome.
Thank you.
All right. And thanks for listening, and thanks for coming on again. And we're a show for those who want to coach, those who used to coach, those who are currently coaching, those who follow coaches and help coaches out, and those who hire and fire them. We don't like the fire part, but we're for all of you. So tune in and keep listening. Appreciate you.
All right, Coach. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it.